Okay, friends, we have arrived at the 2D desk project. So this is your first summative assessment. It's your first major assignment, so it'll be worth about 10% of your final grade. And in this project, you're going to demonstrate all of these 2D drawing skills you've been working on. You're then going to plate this assignment onto a sheet for print and include dimensions the way that we have done before in the previous hand drafting classes that you've taken. I will refer you to, and maybe I can even like do the YouTuber thing of like putting a link up in a box or something up above me. I will refer you to a previous video about what orthographic projection is and how it works, in case that's something you have forgotten or are not 100% clear on. That is foundational knowledge we are assuming when we go into this project. So, that being said, our first task is to take a look at this assignment sheet. So I've made you a little once upon a time for this project, and it says, assignment, Gladstone writing desk. So once upon a time, your designer went shopping, they found this desk. The show can't afford it for props, but they're gonna want you to build it in the shop. So your task as the designer on the show is, or as the technical director on the show in this case perhaps, or as a props designer, would be to draft an orthographic projection of this desk and such that the shop can build it, and you will want to make design choices in this drawing that will allow us to create the desk that looks just like the one in the picture, right? Using the basic information that has been provided on this assignment sheet. So you should have a hard copy of this. If you don't, there's a digital copy in the learning management system. And some of the given information is the overall dimensions of the piece, the size of the desktop, how much knee space, how tall the legs are, overall project weight, which we don't really care about, right? So we have some of the basic dimensions. We also have this little 3D sketch to help us get a little bit more clarity about what is going on in the construction of this desk. And what I'm gonna have you do is take that information, turn it into an orthographic projection with 3 views, so a top view, a front view, and a side view, so that we can send it over to a carpenter in the shop and they can build it. I do want to point out right here the rubric categories for this assignment. So I will be grading on drafting detail, so how thorough are you in the detail of the piece, fidelity to the design, how close does it look like it would come out relative to the project design, how you lay out your plates on your print layout, right? So that means we want to make sure you're aligning your top view and your front view and your side view the way that we would when we did hand drafting. Your title block is your title block complete, and then your dimensions as you add them to that final layout. Okay, so that is what you're graded on this assignment. Let's get started, okay? Okay, back in Vectorworks, let's get all up in there. Let me make sure I have all my windows inside of the bounding box. Okay, so here we are in Vectorworks. We're going to start a new file once again. We are going to use our template, click OK, get it started. Immediately we're going to save it so that we know we're getting our backups. Maybe, save. There we go. Let's call this Bartenstein. We're going to call it 2D desk because you will be doing a 3D version of this later. All right, 2D desk, here we go. Okay, got a nice blank sheet. Make sure I'm on that scenery layer, and I am. You can also see that over here in this top drop down, so that's our scenery layer. So as I look at this desk, and I'm going to just pull it into the frame so we can be on the same page, I can point at some things. The first thing I'm going to do is my top view, and that one is pretty easy because I have dimensions that are given for that desk top, okay? So you can see that is right here, that it is 30 inches high and 47.5 inches wide and 23.5 inches deep. So that means if I'm looking at the top view, it's a rectangle that would be the 47'5", or 47.5 by 23.5. So I'm going to start with that rectangle, okay? So I pick up my rectangle tool. You can also click the 4 in order to grab that tool. I like to make sure I'm kind of close to the 0, 0, and then let's type that in. So my numbers were 47.5 and hit tab, and 23.5 tab. Okay. So I'm obviously very, very far away. We're going to click to lock that in, and now I have my top view of the desk. When you do it, will probably pull in some of these details, put some of those top edges in, but for expedience, we're going to skip that. You can do that on your final project, okay? When you do this assignment. So my next task is going to be to do a front view of this desk, right? So I want to look at this front face and try and get all of these details together. So the way I'm going to start that project, right, is I'm going to make the rectangle that this front view is going to fit in. Let's start then by duplicating my existing rectangle, Command D, picking up my X key so I'm out in space, and then doing very much what we did before when we were hand drafting, where I align it and then I'm going to move it. This is a new keyboard shortcut for you, Command M. It allows you to move a selection by Cartesian offset, which is super useful. So I want to leave the X where it is. I want to change the Y. Let's move it down like 3 feet. Okay, give myself some space to work with. And then I'm going to actually adjust the height to be the height of the desk, which is 30 inches. You'll see that in here, right? 30 inches is the total height. That would be the height of this exterior rectangle that we're just using as a guide right now. So I can do that in object info over here, right? So my width is still that, my height, I can say 30 inches and hit enter, and now this is the height matched to the total height of the desk, okay? So the next thing I want to do is start putting in some of these details. I'm just going to be doing estimates, you do you, in terms of drafting this front elevation. So I'm going to start with the desk top. I clicked into this corner with my rectangle tool. I now can snap to the object. That'll give me the X, and then I can type in a Y. I don't think that desktop is more than 2 inches thick, so I might say -2 inches, enter, click, okay? So there's that desktop. It looks like then the frame is sitting in underneath it by a little bit, right? So maybe what I would do to get that frame is, again, duplicate, Command D, grab my X key, pick this up by its center point, okay? And then do some adjustments on this shape. So I'm gonna come over here again to where it has a width and a height. I know this is gonna be a little taller than the thickness of that top desk, so maybe we'll call it 3.5 instead of 2, right? So now it's a little thicker, maybe just 3 inches is better, okay? And then I can do something here where I move these little dots. That's your anchor point. If I move this dot to the center option and then I change the width, I can have it automatically shrink inwards to give us that inset under an overhang, okay? So I think I want to just subtract like 1 inch in each direction, and Vectorworks will do that for me. I can just say -2 inches, and now it contracts in underneath, right? So there we have that overhang is exposed, okay? You eyeball it, see how you feel about it, see if you feel like the desktop is too thick or this is too small, whatever, right? If you want to be specific, you can create that rectangle for the knee space, right, which is 25.75 inches high, right? So we can do that as well if we want to, right? Where I leave the X like who cares and I say 25.75. That gives me an accurate knee height, right? So then you can adjust these rectangles to fit above that knee height if that's something that you're interested in being precise about, which it is. It's a good thing to be precise about it, okay? So then the next thing is this opening, right? This width underneath. maybe we go with that knee height situation, right? So we can use that knee space measurement right here to figure out how this all lays out, okay? So I'm gonna come back in here and Command Z, get that box back, make it the correct width now, okay? So the width we are looking for is 39.12 for some reason. Let's see what that looks like, okay? So that gives us a good marker. Again, I can pick it up by this bottom center and snap it to the bottom center. Now we know we're symmetrical, and maybe then use these edges as guides, okay? So I think I might shrink, let's move this box, make it a little bit narrower, minus a ½ inch, great. And make this distance, let's see what we're looking at here. I'm just using my measuring tool. It's like what, 1/4 inch, great. So maybe I'll just make this top one 1/4 inch thinner, right? Great, then I can nudge this up, right? I can move, X offset 0, 1/4 inch up, and now that knee space is correct. Then I can grab a rectangle, pop it in here, right? Get that side piece set up. I'm again gonna highlight over this until it turns red, and I'll be able to snap to that width, okay? I think those legs are actually inset underneath. So instead of this given width of 3.19, I'm gonna just anchor point myself over here, and we're gonna call the width 2.75, right? 2 3/4 inches, okay? I can now delete that, right? I can mirror this across the center using my mirror tool. Oh, that didn't work. Get my mirror tool right, okay? And then the only other thing I might see from this front view is this cross piece in the back, right? So we're gonna see the cross piece going across the very back. If you wanna draw in where that drawer is, you're welcome to do that as well. So let's just give us a rough estimate for where that cross piece is. I think it's a little bit lower than the center, and I'm again snapping to the object, right? So I don't need to change the X dimension. I'm gonna make this also 2 inches, okay? So that is now a front view, and I can just delete this bounding box, and I have my front view of my desk, okay? So top view, front view, and then lastly, we'll do a side view, okay? I'm gonna just move this back up like a foot so that I have a little bit more space on my screen. 1 foot, great, okay. So now side view, very similar strategy with my side view, right? So I'm gonna take my rectangle, I'm going to start at that height, right? I'm gonna highlight over the bottom to get the bottom height, and then I know my change in X is the width, which is that 23.5 from before. Click there, move it, 0 now on the Y-axis, 2 feet on the X. Pop it over here to the side, right? I can now use all of those same tools that we'd used in hand drafting, but I'll use it with the snapping and the smart points, right? So I need a rectangle that's gonna fit to that height. So I hover over this little corner until I get a red box, and then it'll let me object align vertical to get that height, okay? Same idea here for the bottom, right? So we're gonna go ahead and make it the same height, right? We're gonna play the same game we did before, which is just subtracting 2 inches from the center here. So we're back to the width, and we say -2, and it will shrink it in just the way we wanted it to. We're then going to do these legs, very similar way, right? So I'm gonna just create the leg. I know it was, what, 2.5 inches before. We can even copy paste it if we want to. I think they look relatively square. I don't know, you decide, right? Maybe it's only 2 inches or 2.25 inches. So if I wanted it to be 2.25, I could just type 2.25, right? Maybe it's a little thinner, right? There's a little bit of an overhang here. How much was that? I don't know. Let's find out. 1/2 inch, great. delete that measurement so I can then move it, Command M, half an inch, or Control M on a PC, X offset 1/2, enter, great. Mirror that across, right? So I'm just building out as I go, okay? And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom for that bottom cross piece, right? Make it maybe a little bit thinner. It looks like it's not quite as thick as the leg. So maybe instead of 2 1/4 or 2 1/2, it's only 2 inches, okay? So then that gives me the bottom piece, and then the last element of this side view is going to be that cross, that X. I'm gonna just delete that background rectangle. So now I just need that crisscross X for those cross bracing pieces, okay? There's several ways you can get there. One of them is going to be to use this mode of your rectangle tool, the 3-point rotated mode, okay? So I just want to show you how that works. We're going to start a little bit up from the bottom, and we're going to go to a little bit down from the top. This is all an estimate. If you wanted it to fit perfectly, you could draw a rectangle inside of this rectangle, right? So I just give myself that kind of situation, right? And then I can say like 1 inch, okay? And it actually gave me not quite an inch, so let's say it's an inch, okay? This will give me now an ability to move this rectangle around, right? I think the best way to get it perfectly centered is going to be to draw another rectangle here, just like that. Grab this rectangle I've created by its center point and snap it to the center point of this void, right? I might even grab my rotate tool and rotate this puppy, you know, so that I'm clearly overlapping, right? And then make sure I'm, again, have my centers squared up. Yeah, great. So now I can get rid of this one. I have that guy. Beautiful, great, wonderful, right? It might even still be too thick, so maybe instead it needs to be 0.75. We can see how that does for us, see when it looks correct. Once I have it in place like this, I have a couple of options. I'm gonna probably send it to the back, right? So Command B, send it to the back, select these two guys who are on top of it, modify, clip surface. That's gonna trim off those extra edges. So now it's just this deal. And then I can mirror it across that center line because we have it placed where we do, and now I have the X in place, okay? So that is my first step, which is drafting this desk. Now that I have a drafting, right, I want to plate it. And I'm going to do many of the same steps we've done before. I'm going to use the 11x17 sheet as my elevation plate. So let's review, right, the steps. We want to come over here. We want to say, hey, 11x17, you're going to be the one I need. We're actually going to delete the sheet number for the ground plan because I want to use this as my plate 1. I'm going to duplicate it so that I still have it if I need it later. We're going to call it plate 1. We're going to call it 2D, or we could call it the Gladstone desk elevation. Great, and grab it, bring it up to the top of the stack. Okay, so blank sheet, Gladstone desk elevation, brilliant, wonderful. Coming back over to our plate, the first thing we need is this top view. I'm going to do it the second way that I was showing you, which is to draw the rectangle for the crop first, because I do want a separate viewport for each view of this desk, okay? So that's my first one. I'm going to create that viewport. Yes, please. Great. This is top view. Great. We can make this a little bigger. And okay. So there's our top view. Oops, I'm still drawing rectangles. Great. Come back over to my scenery layer. Let's do a front view, right? So again, I can just grab a rectangle, draw it around there. View, create viewport. Okay, front view. Yeah, 1/2 inch scale, please. Thank you. Okay. So there's a front view. I do want them to be aligned the way that we play this game when we do orthographic projections. So in order to do that, X key, I want to grab it, hover over, and then I can align it vertically, right? So now they are aligned, and then I'll do my last one, which is the side view. I'm going to do it a different way. So instead of creating a new viewport from my design layer, I'm actually going to duplicate this existing viewport, okay? I'm going to match it all up to its current location, double click on it, change the crop, right? So I'm going to just move the crop over to the side, right? Need to move my attributes out of the way so I can exit the crop. Please let me leave, okay? Then I can move this guy over. This time I'm moving in actual inches. So 3 actual inches moves it across, right? And that may be too far, but we'll get there in a second. You can change your drawing title right here in Object Info if you want to. And you can also come in then and adjust your annotations, okay? So we'll slide that over there. Okay, so those are my 3 views. That was step 1 of this game, right? I've left a lot of space around them because I know you're going to come in and do your dimensions just like you've done them on orthographic projections when you were working in hand drafting, okay? So once we come into dimensions, the one that's going to be your friend is this constrained linear dimension. You're going to grab each point that you need to dimension, okay? And you can pull them out. I have set up the template file to do your dimensions in blue. However, you may or may not like the look of this dimension style. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not my fave. I really like the ASME dimension, right? That looks to me more like a theatrical dimension. I'm switching them right over here in the Dimension Standard tab, but you can also do it as you draw. So if you go to Dimension Standard right here at the top, you can switch yourself into ASME, and it will allow you to do those dimensions. Now again, this only really works inside viewport annotation, because if you're not in your viewport annotation and you start pulling dimensions, it's going to be in actual big inches, not in scale. So you have to be inside of that viewport in order for your dimensions to come out in scale. If you are, let's do one more quick little troubleshooting, okay? If you are, let me hit my X key, inside of a viewport, here's a good example, right? I'm in this viewport, I need to do some itsy bitsy tiny dimensions, right? There is not enough space to do this here, right? If I do like that, that 1 3/4 dimension is bonkers, I can't read it, right? If you get your X key, right, after you've dropped that dimension on, you can zoom in, you can grab this dimension itself, pull it out, like you can grab the actual text, right? You can pull it out like this, you've got your arrows on the outside, that's cool, and then you can come down here, scroll down in Object Info, and you can ask it to place a leader line for you, okay? So now it allows you to point to that tiny space with that dimension so that you aren't trying to cram too much stuff into one space. On this front view, especially because there's a lot of little bitty dimensions, you want to make sure you're arranging your dimensions as efficiently as possible so that you have space. You also want to remember all of those rules about dimensioning that we had previously. So you want to think about dimensioning from the smallest things out to the biggest things so that your leader lines aren't crisscrossing. You want to place your dimensioning points efficiently. So with this one, right, I have this option about where that insertion point is on this dimension. So I could dimension from all the way in here, but then my dimension line is crashing into my object line, which I don't want, okay? So I want to make sure my dimension line insertion points are at the outermost corners of things, unless there is a reason why it would need to cross an object line, okay? So these are just like going back, remembering those dimensioning skills from previous classes, and applying that in this assignment, okay? So you will then, after you do that, go in and follow the same steps that we did previously to complete your title block, okay? So that'll be just the way that we did for the door project and the logo project. You can go in, update your title block to include all of the relevant information, make sure your scale and date are in there and are correct, and export a PDF of this file to submit as your assignment, okay? So that should be everything you need to know to draft this orthographic projection of the desk. But if you have any questions at all, let me know, reach out. I'm happy to help you out and make sure everything is all squared away in your 2D drafting so we can move into the 3D next time. All right, thanks friends, bye.